Grateful to be here. Going to give some shout outs. First off, how many of you have ever taken a training with Axeon Corporation? Look at those hands flying up. And you guys still came. That's fantastic. That's a good sign. Our topic of today is specifically going to be focused in on the FDA transition to the QMSR in 2026. February 2026. So I travel the nation, and I have opportunity to work with companies of all different sizes. The interesting item that I come away with different sizes of organizations is I've come to understand that the larger organizations tend to be a little less aggressive on this transition than smaller organizations. Smaller organizations are reaching out saying, what in the world is going to be happening in February 2026? So for the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about that. At the very end, I'd like to have some time to perhaps answer some questions. There's a gentleman sitting in our audience today who just came out of an FDA inspection of his facility. Was it yesterday? Today? Today. So we have cutting-edge information from an FDA inspector about what's happening in February 2026 and what their role is going to be in our quality management systems, right? So why are we here? Jumping straight to the point, we at Axeon want you to be prepared. So today, we're going to be focusing in on just a little bit about the regulation and what it's encompassing, and what the end result is maybe give you some ideas on some action planning items that are blind to many of us. So I'm a storyteller. So here's part of my story. In 2016, when ISO 13485 became a thing, something happened in the industry. Something really huge happened in the regulatory industry. One of those things happened to be 13485 got upgraded to the 2016 version that we've been living with for 9 years. That's kind of a yawner, isn't it? But also the MDR became, the European Union Medical Device Regulation also became a thing. And what that caused was a clearinghouse of the notified bodies out there in the industry. So here's a staggering note for you. Staggering note is a couple years ago, the numbers probably changed, probably gone up. There were over 350,000 medical device manufacturers worldwide. Do you think the FDA can visit all of those sites? No, they couldn't. So about that time, the FDA started working with other nations and their regulatory bodies, and they came up with a thing called MDSAP, the Medical Device Single Audit Program. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But in the midst of all that, what occurred was there was a clearinghouse of notified bodies, and there was probably about 5 that survived, from about 120 down to 5. And those notified bodies became very, very, very busy. Okay? So one of those items we're going to be talking about here in a few minutes is how the MDSAP program is going to be impacting our organizations, potentially. Okay? So let's dive into the regulations just a little bit, a high-level perspective. So what's happening to the 21 CFR 820? I like to call it the law. I call it the law because many people that I work with don't come from a regulatory background and a regulatory perspective. So they just hear regulation and yep, regulatory regulation. What does that mean? Well, it's the law. And it's the law because it comes with a penalty if we don't follow the law. The FDA inspectors, they're law enforcement officers. They carry a badge, okay? So we want to make sure that our quality management systems comply to the regulations, quote unquote, the FDA law first, okay? So here's some items that are changing with the FDA quality management system regulations. In Part A, there is a new subpart 820.7. It incorporates 1345 by reference into the 21 CFR 820, the medical device regulations. And another subsection is brand new, which is the 810, which is the requirements for the quality management system. So by the raise of hands, how many of you have already got in your system ISO 13485? Okay, it looks like 98% of you have already got that in there. How many of you have come from an organization that is just dealt with the 21 CFR 820? Okay, nobody, that's good. All right. How many of you, by the raise of hands, have been visited by an FDA inspector? Okay, those hands are coming up slowly. Some of you are kind of admitting it. Yeah, kind of, sort of. Okay, this lady right here in the middle, I can see you right here. What was your last experience with the FDA? Really loud.
I wasn't actually part of the team. I just know that they were there.
They were just there. Okay. Well, I'm going to pick on you again some more. All right? All right. A couple more areas with the updates to the 21 CFR 820. In Subpart B, there's a brand new subpart, and it is 820.35, and it deals with control of records. And then there's a brand new subpart, .45, which is the device labeling and packaging controls. So let's just do a little bit deeper dive on some of these items. With the FDA, some of these next slides are basically just going to be some condensed quotes right from their final rule, which came out in February of 2024. The FDA has given us 2 years to get primed for this. So in the executive summary section of the final rule, it says the FDA has historically recognized the benefits of harmonization with other countries. So right now they're revising the 21 CFR Part 820 to be the quality management systems for medical devices. It's incorporating by reference ISO 1345 2016, the QMSR, and the final rule harmonizes the quality system requirements for medical devices with other regulatory authorities worldwide. So this rule becomes effective on February the 2nd, 2026. Who wants to do a shout out real quick? What do you think is going to happen on February the 3rd on 2026? What can an FDA inspector do? Look at different things. I love that answer. Go a little bit deeper.
So they're going to start to have access to like your management reviews. They're going to start looking at your internal audit reports, and they're going to start looking at your labeling much more significantly, your risk management documentation.
Oh, here's the mic. That is fantastic. Did you all hear that? Okay. The FDA inspectors can now look at things that they weren't able to look at before. Right? How many are comfortable and confident to have an FDA inspector looking at management review notes? Good job. But one gentleman out there's like, yes, they just left and we did well. Okay. All right. So important item on this slide is on the critical action item down there below is we have until February the 2nd, 2016 to get our quality management systems compliant to the new requirements. Here's the scary thing is to finish my story from earlier. Larger organizations are taking the risk, and they're thinking, hey, I don't have to be compliant. I can start. I can start at that time. That's where I start making my money, because I'm a business consultant. An FDA inspector comes in, drops a few bombshells, and like, wow, how do we become compliant to this? Okay? So we don't want to start on that date. We want to be compliant by that date. So my slide deck is I'll try to be compliant by February 2026. So a couple of other items from the FDA. We, the FDA, are amending the 820 by incorporating the reference of the quality management system requirements from ISO 1345. And this is in hopes to get the regulations compliant with parity with worldwide so that they're making products that are safe and effective in a systematic way. Continuing on with what the FDA is saying, as such, we, the FDA, are retaining the scope of the quality management system regulations and amending many of the regulations and the provisions, and we, the FDA, are amending the title. We're going to the quality management system requirements, the QMSR, so they're kind of rebranding it, and the FDA has made conforming edits to Part 4, which is the regulation for combination products. And the bottom part of that slide is really important. These edits do not impact the current good manufacturing practice of requirements for combination products. So if you've got a combination device, little has changed. This is a little eye chart as to what is changing with the regulation. You can see there's some new parts that we've already discussed. Part 822.10, dot 30, dot 45. And you can see where they're correlating with the 1345 in the middle, and then the 21 CFR subpart on the left-hand column. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive here. With the impact of the change, part of the rule has what's called comments. There's dozens and dozens of pages of comments that the FDA put out to industry, and people like us wrote into the FDA and said, hey, if you're making the change to the regulation, what's going to impact this? How is this going to be impacted? What's going to be happening here? What's going to be happening there? So one of the questions was, what's up with this medical device single audit program, otherwise known as MDSAP? So the FDA sees an opportunity to harmonize with the rest of the world. And through that harmonization, they're creating the quality management system regulation, and it's utilizing the harmonization with other worldwide entities such as Australia, Brazil, Canada, and Japan. And if I weren't holding a microphone, I would do a little finger puppet deal. Basically, you take all the world's regulations for medical device manufacturing, and you put your fingers together and you wave your thumb and your pinky. The regulations are virtually the same in every country that you go to, but there's labeling differences. There might be cleanliness issue differences. And so there are these odd things that hang out. Well, the FDA has taken that notion and said everything looks to be the same, but with this audit model, the medical device single audit program, it's a harmonized methodology of how we, as companies, if we're in that MDSAP program, can audit our systems to be compliant. And if you have a notified body, such as BSI in that last session, they come in, but your notified body can come in. But as third-party auditors, which I'm also a part of, we can come in and do that worldwide compliance for Australia, Brazil, Canada, Japan, and the United States. Okay? So that single audit program kind of ties things together from a regulatory standpoint. In a few minutes, I'm going to tell you some of the caveats that the FDA has got. So under the MDSAP audit program, they can be performed by third-party auditors. And jumping right down to the bottom of that slide, This allows the FDA to participate in the MDSAP and accept certain MDSAP audits as a substitute for their own surveillance audits. How powerful is that? Okay, I'm a storyteller. Let me tell you a story. The organization that I worked with, believe it or not, we were one of the first ones to ever get the MDSAP certificate. 2 weeks later, FDA inspector knocks on our door, and the receptionist lets him in, but there was a different behavior. We didn't bring him in and stick him in the sterile room where there was no books, only a chair and a dry board maybe, and maybe a table. And they was there in the reception room, and they called us up. We came in, and they said, hey, we've got an MDSAP certificate. He says, I don't care. I'm an FDA inspector. Let me in. I'm here to do a routine inspection. Well, long story short, 25-ish minutes later, after getting a hold of that person's supervisor, that supervisor calls up and says, cease and desist. They have an MDSAP certificate. We've taken a look at their audit report. They're doing okay. There's a benefit of having an MDSAP certification. There's also an expense to that. Okay? But the point I'm trying to make here is that bottom bullet point. The FDA can participate in the MDSAP audit program, and they may use not just the certificate as evidence of compliance to the FDA's 21 CFR 820, but the audit report that they have access to. Okay? So that audit report from a notified body can have very powerful meaning for us as medical device manufacturers. So, continuing on with some background and getting into the action items, some things that you might want to take away as action items. The FDA is incorporating 1345/2016 into the requirement for the FDA. So the action item is this standard in our company's documents of external origin? And since I saw 99% of you people raising your hand going, yep, that's a no-brainer. Oh, okay, Marcus, move on. We have that in our documents of external origin. Excellent, okay? Do we have ISO 9000 2015 version Echo, which is the quality management system, fundamentals, and vocabulary for our quality management system? Have we got that document saved in our documents of external origin? Perhaps we do. So if we don't, that might be a very helpful document to have on our system. CIV. So it's higher than 2015? Okay. Ashton, will you make a note of that? I'm going to check that out. Okay. Thank you, Siv. The gentleman who just came from an FDA inspection. All right. Some significant changes. So I'm giving you the highlights of this. Some of the significant changes are some terminology and some language, if you will. So top management replaces management with executive responsibility. You notice there in the parentheses, we've got response 27. If that interests you, you can get the final ruling. You can download it for free, start reading through it, buzz down to response 27. And it's going to give you all of these items that are becoming obsolete with the FDA regulation. So top management replaces management with executive responsibility. The medical device file, that replaces the device master record. Okay, I've got a little action item there. There's something interesting that you may want to take a note on and consider. With the notion of a medical device file and what's in 1345, there is a difference, and there's 3 differences right here. They're virtually the same, except for 1345 doesn't talk about software specifications. It does not talk about appropriate equipment specifications, and it does not talk about production environment specifications. Okay? So something you just might want to take a note of as an action item. And the quality system record, the QSR requirement, is now being obsoleted and being removed from the 21 CFR 820. Design and development files are replacing the design history file. And I've been in the industry a long time, and some of these things are a little bit painful. I've been teaching and promoting device master records for 30 years and helping people build those, okay? Little story, since I'm a storyteller. I'm working out on the East Coast. I'm working with a company, worldwide company. I'm at one of their sites, and I'm an employee. I'm their quality systems manager. I've been there 6 months. I'm doing an assessment, and we have 0 device master records. 0. So I go to my director, and I says, we don't have any device master records. He says, don't worry about it. We've been around a long time. Company's 110 years old, not a problem. We've never had that come up in an inspection ever before. Well, I couldn't sleep. So after hours and on weekends, me and an engineer for 3 months worked, and we took care of the top 10 highest risk device master records. 2 weeks later, the FDA knocked on the door. Within the first 3 minutes after showing us his badge, he asks for the device master records. At that time, I wasn't the management representative. So my management representative looks at me, and he says, Markus, would you please go get the device master records for the inspector? I said, certainly. So I step out. A few minutes later, I come back, and I plop them on the desk, and I says, there's the device master records. My boss looks at me and goes, you got these? I says, yeah, we got these. Okay. He pushes them across the desk to the FDA inspector. The FDA inspector pushes them back across the table to my boss and says, those aren't device master records. He looks at me and says, you got it? Yeah, those are device master records. He pushes them back across the table. Yes, they are. No, they're not. Yes, they are. He pulls out his badge, sticks it on top, opens it up, pushes it across the table, says, those are not the device master records. Read the title. I made a mistake. I called them medical device files. Okay? So today, if an FDA inspector shows up at your organization, they're going to ask for device master records. In a matter of just less than 3 months, they're going to ask for a medical device file. So there's a terminology language difference, and there's also those, right there in the middle of that slide, 3 areas that you might want to consider keeping or not keeping. Right now, they're requirements. In a few months, they may not be requirements, but there is a difference. What are you going to do about it as an organization? Okay? Regulatory documentation. And the last one, traceability records, device history records, is language that's going to be replaced with just regular traceability. Okay? There's a little example of some terms that are staying common with us. It's important to note that middle portion, if a term creates inconsistencies with the Food and Drug Administration Cosmetic Act, the 21 CFR 820 definition takes precedence. It's a prime example where the law, the regulation, is going to trump 13485. So here's a warning. How many of you have had experiences with FDA inspectors that are meticulous about wording? I'm getting nods going, yep, 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 okay? I would recommend, if you don't take anything out of this little discussion today, please, please make sure you follow the regulation first and then 13485 second. Follow it first, because they'll get you, okay? Some other areas that are going to be more mentioned, basically Part 803, which is medical device reporting, 830, UDI numbering, and the .180, which deals with Record keeping. This was mentioned just a few minutes ago. Currently, in our regulation today with the FDA, they do not have access to management review notes, supplier audits, and or quality audits and supplier audits. Will they do that in the future? Evidence indicates that might be the case, right? A couple of other highly important items that might seem lazy, but right now the FDA most often will not ask for a quality manual. There's nothing in the regulation that says we have to have a quality manual if you're just FDA compliant. Come February 2026, that's probably going to be one of the very first things that they ask for. I'm a storyteller. Another quick story for you. A year and a half ago, I'm in an FDA inspection with one of my clients. Brand new inspector is sitting there with a seasoned inspector, and the newbie says, "Can I see your quality manual?" The management representative says, "Can you please show me the regulations where I need to show you the quality manual?" She looks at her supervisor and says, "What's up with that? Can I please see your quality manual? Can you please show me the regulations right now where it says I need to have a quality manual?" So finally, the senior gentleman said, "Do you have a quality manual?" She said, "Yes." He says, "Can you just show it to her?" And then off we went. But if you don't have a solid quality manual, then guess where they're going to go first? Because 1345 requires us to have a quality manual that's compliant. So some action items that you might want to consider. Do we need a rewrite of our quality manual to change some of these terminologies or equate them? Okay. Some other areas, the device manufacturer, the procedures need to be interconnected from the quality manual down. Some of you might have charts, some of you might have graphs, some of you might have just listing. But I would encourage you, because I've seen it and it's going to be happening more, is our top level procedures, our tier 1, tier 2 procedures, are they interconnected and are they related to each other? If not, you might not pass the scrutiny of an FDA inspector who's going to be asking for the interconnectedness of your system. And make sure your document control procedure is updated, because there's 12 new criteria. A lot there. Okay? These next few areas, I'm just going to skip across them because you can read them for yourself. But in subpart 10, which deals with the requirements for the quality management system, I need to have a documented quality management system with some new extra clauses. Part B is we need to comply with the appropriate regulatory requirements. Part C, design and development, pretty much hasn't changed at all, but there needs to be a requirement there. And D, the devices that support or sustain life, that might not apply to you folks, but if it does, there's some requirements for traceability. That's a little higher and above what's currently in the 1340, 21 CFR 820. And finally, enforcement. I'm going to read this one. The failure to comply to any applicable requirement of this part, which is 21 CFR 820, the QMSR, renders the device adulterated under Section 501 of the Food and Drug Administration. Such devices, as well as any persons responsible for failure to comply, is subject to regulatory action. Okay. It's been in there in the past. It's still there. Powerful. New subpart. I'm going to jump ahead on this one. The new subpart is dealing with control of records. Here's a little bit of a giveaway. If our internal auditing system does not incorporate these subparts, we are leaving our quality management system vulnerable to non-compliance. So take a look at your internal auditing checklists to make sure that they incorporate the subparts and remove the old subparts. So with regards to control of records, there's control of records and complaints. and servicing records, and traceability records, and UDI records. Okay. Another new subpart, device labeling and packaging. Once again, it's a new criteria for our internal auditing processes. Please make sure your audit checklists are updated. Not much has changed with regards to that. They've just realigned things so that device labeling and packaging controls are in subpart 45. Let's talk about risk. And I'm going to Markusize this one just for a second. What I mean by Markusized it is I think many of us have been in the industry long enough to realize that risk and risk management is coming on more and more and more as the regulations change. We have risk-based approach discussion topics in 1345 that exceed what's in 21 CFR. So the FDA, in comment number 9, they say this, quote, the FDA does not, in this rulemaking, incorporate ISO 14971 or any other standard referenced by or listed as a source in ISO 1345, but acknowledges that these other standards may be helpful in understanding applications of 13485. So, some quick little action items. What is the status of our risk management procedure? Does our procedure align with 14971? Do we have ISO TR 24971? And are these in our library of documents of external origin? Okay? And is our risk management procedure up to snuff? Once again, with the MDSAP audit program, a little highlight here is the FDA is definitely participating in that. And the FDA, there in the middle of the screen, utilizes the audit reports. And they have access to those audit reports. They can see if the notified body has submitted a report for your company, and if you have any nonconformities that are ranked as 4s or 5s, and what those are. If you're not familiar with the MDSAP audit program, 4s and 5s, those are majors. Anything 3, 2, 1, those are considered minors. But those 4s and 5s, if they're egregious enough, they're going to show up on the FDA website, so they have access to see, if when they come to an inspection, what's going on inside your organization. An important point I want to have you guys walk away with. From comment 79, the FDA does not intend to require a medical device manufacturer to obtain ISO 134 certification. They're not forcing us to spend that $45,000 to $60,000 a year to get certified. Where does that come from? Well, if you've just been through an MDSAP or a 1345 audit, those audits can cost you about $35,000 to $45,000. And there's a certificate fee that goes on top of that. Then there's an administration fee to have your notified body. So it adds up. But the FDA is not requiring it. But we need to be compliant to 13485. Okay? So the 1345 certificate will not be considered as an acceptable substitute. So the FDA will look at the audit report to see how things are going. The FDA will not, the FDA inspection will not result in the issuance of a certificate to 13485. That comes from comment 79. I have clients saying, great, if I do all this work, I have an FDA inspector come in, we pass with flying colors, I get a certificate, right? No, the FDA is not a certification body. They are a regulatory body. Now, how much time have I got left, Chris?
Let's say 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. We're going to talk a little bit about strategy. Since I'm a storyteller, here's an important story. In 2016, for 18 months almost to the day, ISO 13485 auditors would come into a facility and they would ask for the quality plan from the transition from the old 13485 to the new 13485. Many companies were flat-footed and they did not have a quality plan. We had, hey, we talked about it in management meeting, hey, we did this, we did that. We had all this anecdotal stuff, but in an audit, we need to show evidence, evidence, evidence. So these next few slides are just a recommended, please do something about a quality plan, planning your transition from where we are with the 21 CFR 820 to the new QMSR, because now the FDA can ask us for our quality plan. It's always been there, but now it's more of a requirement. So I anticipate from the February the 3rd, 2026, for 18 months, one of the first things they're going to ask for is, please show me your transition plan from where you are to where you're supposed to be. And if top management has not reviewed and signed that plan, you might find yourself into a dinger. Okay? At Axeon, we're all about prevention, prevention, prevention. So please take away that note, have a quality plan in place. These next slides are just, here's what the clause is, here's what the clause says, here's why you need to do it. I encourage you to have a quality plan in place. I can't mention that enough. Getting top management's approval on it. How many regulatory managers we got out there? Okay? I pick on you, Chris? You raised your hand, right? Okay. You think top management's going to write the quality plan? Nope. Who's going to write it? Yeah. This gentleman right here? Who's going to write the quality plan?
Me.
Yeah. Okay. I highly recommend that when we write those quality plans, have a space for top management signature so that we show evidence that they have committed to the quality plan. Okay? Why? Because I lived through it 9 years ago for 18 months. And when companies did not have a quality plan, they got a dinger. Okay? So secure top management's responsibility. Why? Because it's in the 1345, it's in the 21 CFR. There are shall statements. Follow the shall statements. Follow the shall statements and do them. Right? So, in a brief, create your quality plan because it's going to be a regulatory requirement. The FDA is going to ask for it, most likely. Secure top management's commitment to that. And then please, my recommendation, have a third-party organization come in and do either a gap analysis or do a QMSR audit. If you can do it before January, I recommend that because the bottom little statement there, number 5, is we want to have a fully implemented quality management system compliant to the 21 CFR 820 by 9/30/2025. Why in the world do you think I put that down there? We want to be compliant on the day that the regulation becomes effective. And so we need to have objective evidence that our quality management system is in place. And if we don't have an internal audit that's been done according to the new regulation, we're heading towards a pretty sizable indication that we've got a dinger in our system and our auditing system is not in place. Okay? That's why I'm promoting. Why? I could have changed that date, but I didn't, because I want to emphatically say, please get your systems done so you have objective evidence showing that you're compliant to the regulation when it becomes effective. Okay, we've been together for half an hour, 45 minutes. We've gotten a general understanding of the FDA ruling. We've identified some of the gaps that it's creating in our quality management system, some of the additions, some of the deletions, and some of the realignments of the requirements, and the integration of 1345 into our system. And we've given you just a few of the action items that you might want to consider. Axeon, we have a half-day training. Half-day training for this transition. We go through another like 30 action items that you might want to consider that we might be blind to as we're making the transition. So thank you very much for your participation. Everybody look at this gentleman back here. who's standing in the corner, his name is Ashton, okay? He's one of our sales reps at Axeon. If you get in touch with him, either now or after, his email address is right there. Those of you who would like to have a training certificate for this class, if you have continuing education, he will give you a free certificate so that you can stick that in your training file to say that you've gotten some orientation to this. So I told too many stories. I can't answer any questions. But thank you very much for letting me get into your business, and I appreciate you staying in this stimulating topic. Appreciate it.